Alright, good evening ladies. In today's video we're going to be discussing SEI. This has been so hyped up recently, it's been absolutely pumping, so I wanted to dive a little bit further into it, see if there's real fundamental substance behind these claims, saying it's a Solana killer, saying it's going to, this ecosystem is going to grow exponentially. I want to see if there is fundamental value behind it, if it can keep going up in price, if there's potential airdrops coming, because if this ecosystem grows a lot, the potential airdrops within this ecosystem could be very valuable. So I'll share some airdrop strategies, farming strategies at the end of this video if you want to dive into trying to farm some of these airdrops. But before we get into that, I want to explain, say, on a deep fundamental level, on a what actually is their mission. Are they better than Solana? Are they better than other blockchains in any way? And of course, whether or not I'm buying into, say, if I'm farming some of these airdrops. When I mentioned Celestia for the first time almost a year ago now, way before it launched, and then I mentioned it again when it launched, and then I mentioned it again, or I did another video on it where I talked about the airdrops, potential airdrops you could farm for Celestia. And if you bought Celestia when it dropped, you're up almost 10x on that trade. And we just got our first airdrop for staking at least one Celestia, so staking like $10 worth of Celestia was the minimum allocation or something outrageously small amount that you needed to stake, and we just got a $1,000 airdrop for doing so. So obviously I'm looking at potential other plays, but there's a few reasons why Celestia has been performing so well. One of the main reasons is, like I said, for just staking Celestia, you're going to be entitled for a lot of airdrops, including the Dimension airdrop, which I just mentioned. So people are incentivized to lock up their tokens. They're incentivized first to go buy tokens, buy Celestia tokens, and then they're incentivized to put them away, lock them away so they can't sell them. So obviously that's a nice recipe for price appreciation. But the other reason Celestia has been performing so well is because it's the leader of a very strong narrative, which is modularity when it comes to a blockchain. So modularity is essentially dividing up the different elements of a blockchain, the different functions of a blockchain. So Celestia is like the number one place for data availability, one of the functions that a blockchain needs in order to actually have transactions going through it. So Celestia is kind of the king of this narrative. So Celestia is kind of the leader in this whole modular blockchain thesis. What is a potential thesis that you could put, say, what bucket could, say, get into? And it's obviously the Solana killer bucket, which I think is going to be a very strong narrative in this bull cycle. Although I don't think there is going to be any Solana killers, or I think that's unlikely, I do think it's going to be a strong narrative in this bull cycle. Just like in the last cycle, Ethereum killers were a massive narrative, which included Solana, included Avalanche, included Phantom, etc., etc. These all performed so well in the last cycle. So let's dive into the fundamentals of SEI a bit further, the technicalities behind it. So SEI is marketing itself as the fastest blockchain in the world, and to be fair to them, they do have some right to actually say that. They are extremely fast. We're going to compare the speeds and the different functionalities to Solana and to other blockchains further on in this video, but at the very outset, they are a very fast blockchain. So their fundamental core mission was, like, the founder essentially believes that the main use case for blockchains is for trading digital assets. So if you look at any of the top protocols, the top apps in crypto, most of them, like 99% of them, when you peel back all the layers, are just for trading digital assets. So if you look at Uniswap, you look at NFT marketplaces, if you look at even lending and borrowing platforms, essentially it all comes down to trading digital assets. So at first he wanted to create an exchange which made, like, the best UX. He came from the San Francisco area, so he was saying in the San Francisco area, all people care about is solving customer problems and making the customer experience exceptional. So that's kind of the mindset that they went into it. They went into to try and create the best place to trade digital assets, and they realized an exchange wasn't going to cut it. They decided they're going to pivot and actually create their entire own layer 1 blockchain with this very fundamental concept at heart, very fundamental concept in mind, which was creating the best user experience for trading digital assets. And who are actually the users of a layer 1 blockchain? The most important users of a layer 1 blockchain, the customers, if you like, aren't actually like the end user like myself. It's actually the developers who are building on top of it. And what the developers want is good customer UX for people to trade digital assets. That's essentially what SEI's whole mission statement, whole aim is about. So like I said, SEI is marketing or branding themselves as the fastest blockchain in the world. And let's compare it to the likes of Solana. So this is from their very own website. So, you got to take some of these numbers with a grain of salt. Although, these numbers definitely have merit. So the Solana transactions per second, they're giving it 10,000, which at the moment is roughly how much transactions per second Solana is capable of. And SEI's transaction or operations per second is 20,000. And the time to finality on SEI is much, much faster than Solana. Solana's time to finality is 2.5 seconds. So what does time to finality mean? Essentially, is like, when is the transaction irreversible? When is it 100% written on the blockchain? When is like the block being produced and you can't do anything about it? Whereas transactions per second, I think that's a bit more obvious. How many transactions can go through the blockchain at the same time? Now, because Solana and SEI are both parallelized blockchains, it means multiple transactions can go through at the same time or in parallel. So you can put thousands of transactions through at the same time. So that's one of the big breakthroughs of this cycle is parallelized transactions. And SEI is actually a parallelized EVM compatible chain. So EVM essentially means EVM compatible means that Ethereum apps can just bridge the same code and plonk it onto the same network and take advantage of this extremely fast speed and time to finality. Now, Solana's TPS, the max theoretical TPS for Solana, they didn't put that in this chart, but once Firedancer comes online, the max theoretical TPS for Solana is potentially up to 1 million transactions per second. So they weren't too eager to put that in this chart, but at the end of the day, that's a lot more scalable. You can have a lot more transactions in the future going through Solana. And I think even right now, the max theoretical transactions per Solana is about 70,000, whereas SEI's the max is about 40,000. So Solana is a little bit more scalable, but the time to finality with SEI is definitely faster. Now, once you have transaction speeds below 1 second, like when you use your Phantom wallet, it kind of feels like your transaction goes through almost instantaneously. Like it spins for like maybe a second and then your transaction goes through. And it's the same with SEI. When you do a transaction on SEI, it feels instantaneous. Whereas when you do a transaction on Ethereum or on Bitcoin, it takes, it can take up to a couple of minutes. So you're waiting on your MetaMask for it to go through. And yeah, like obviously when you do the big jump from Ethereum to Solana, it's like orders and orders of magnitude faster, orders and orders of magnitude cheaper. So that's a big step function change, and you can really see why Solana is an Ethereum killer, whereas when you're making the jump from Solana to SEI, it's less of a difference. Like once you have a transaction that goes through within 1 second, like no one really gets bored waiting for 1 second. Like you click the button, you wait half a second and it goes through, whereas you click a button, you wait 1/10 of a second and it goes through. Like it's not really a huge step function difference. So that's one of the reasons I'm not like, okay, SEI is going to completely take Solana's place. There's less of an argument that SEI is going to uproot Solana than Solana is going to uproot Ethereum, in my opinion, because it's less of a massive shift change difference. So remember when I was saying that SEI wants to create the best place to trade digital assets. So the founders kind of came up with this trilemma. We know the blockchain trilemma. It's very hard to be very decentralized, very fast, and very cheap. You kind of have to, there's different trade-offs there. But Solana kind of solved this trilemma I'm not going to get into that, but Solana essentially solved that trilemma. But they came up with this different trilemma for exchanges. So there's obviously centralized exchanges and there's decentralized exchanges. So when you have a decentralized exchange, basically you're running the trades on multiple databases, whereas when it's on a centralized exchange, it's only on one database. So a decentralized exchange is almost always going to be like it's always almost going to be a little bit slower, a little bit more difficult to get it to work rather than a centralized database. But obviously it's not decentralized then, so that's the Exchange Trilemma. So here's scalability, decentralization, and capital efficiency. We can see if you have scalability and capital efficiency, that means you're a centralized exchange. If you have scalability and decentralization, you're an AMM. You're an AMM, and whatever CLOB is the other one. So you can't really have all three at the moment, or so SEI says. So that's what they're trying to solve for, and that's what SEI in the very middle of this Venn diagram is marketing itself as. And they've basically solved this trilemma. So SEI are solving this trilemma with a number of technical breakthroughs, including twin turbo consensus, which is mixing proof of stake with Byzantine fault tolerance. And this is essentially one of the reasons they have such fast transaction finality. I don't really know what that means, but that's what they're saying, why it works. Also, they have the parallelization of their blockchain, which we've discussed. Transactions going through at the same time, not that complicated. And native matching engine. SEI is building a matching engine directly into the protocol to eliminate the need of additional servers, which will reduce latency and increase security. So that's how they're solving this trilemma that they've come up with. And the other nice thing about SEI, they've kind of eliminated front running, so you can't just pay extra to get ahead of the queue and get that MEV, the minimum extractable value, which we know happens in Ethereum. Like if you don't set your slippage settings right, someone's going to front run your transaction, buy the coins before you, and then sell you the same coins because you haven't put your settings in correctly, which is super annoying. And that's what is incentivized in Ethereum. They've kind of tried to get rid of this by using frequent bath auctioning. So essentially, you can't really do this, and all these transactions are happening at the same time rather than anyone getting to front run another person, which is better. And I think Solana has something quite similar in this regard. Now that's kind of the technical jargon out of the way, but why is all of this useful? Why would you use SEI over Solana? Well, the big reason you would use SEI, like I alluded to at the start or earlier on in the video, is because it's not just yet, but it will be EVM compatible. So people who have been developing on Ethereum for months and years potentially, they're like, okay, Ethereum's too expensive. My users might not want to use Ethereum, but I built all this code for this game or for this DeFi application. Do I have to rewrite all of this and bridge over to Solana where it has fast and cheap? Or will I go to this layer 2 blockchain, which is an extra element where like my users won't really want to have to bridge their assets to a layer 2. It just adds all this complexity. Well, with SEI, it's going to be a layer 1 by itself on its own wallet, and it's EVM compatible, so I don't have to rewrite all the code. So that's the nice thing about SEI over Solana. So in that way, SEI is probably more of a killer of layer 2s and of Ethereum than a killer of Solana. But maybe a lot of people don't really think about it that way. But it's actually stealing developers from Ethereum because the developers have written all this code or have learned how to use the Ethereum blockchain, and SEI is going to be compatible with their code and with their knowledge. The other nice thing about SEI is it's in another hot narrative at the moment. Like I've talked about Celestia a couple of times in this video. Another reason Celestia is a hot narrative at the moment, it's in the Cosmos ecosystem, and so is SEI. So if you have a Kepler wallet, that's actually a Cosmos ecosystem wallet. So you can use that for Injective, you can use it for Celestia, and of course you can use it for SEI. So it's in the Cosmos ecosystem, which I think is going to continue to perform well. We've seen Injective, we've seen Celestia, all obviously absolutely printing recently, and potentially one of the reasons that SEI has been doing well as well, because it's in the Cosmos ecosystem. So there's the Solana SVM, which I think is going to perform well, and the Cosmos ecosystem, which I also think is going to perform well in this bull cycle. Alright, so that's enough about the technicalities, why it's potentially useful. Let's have a look at potential airdrops that you could get by participating in the SEI ecosystem. And I also want to share my thoughts if I'm going to be buying SEI myself, if I'm going to be participating in the ecosystem, and if I think it's still going to continually massively outperform in price appreciation. All right, so let's have a look at some of the projects and some of the things you can do in the SEI ecosystem to potentially get an airdrop or just to speculate in the ecosystem itself. Now, I will say when I was using some of these platforms, this ecosystem is extremely new and it's extremely clunky and it doesn't really work. A lot of these apps and protocols I couldn't even get to work. So that's either a bad sign in the fact that, this ecosystem is supposed to all be about good user experience, and I've had a pretty terrible user experience trying to get some of these apps to work. But potentially it also means you're very early in the fact that if you do get to work, a lot of people probably couldn't get it to work, so you're going to get potentially a bigger slice of the pie of any potential airdrops, and you're earlier to the whole thing. So, the wallet I was using was the Kepler wallet. Like I mentioned, it's in the Cosmos ecosystem, so you can use it. But I think the Leap wallet is probably better for the SEI network because I couldn't get my Kepler wallet to work in some of these apps. But the first app we'll mention is called Kryptonite, and this is for liquid staking. So you can stake your SEI with them and you'll get a liquid staking token in return, and your liquid staking token will accrue staking rewards. But you can also, at some point in the future, use that liquid staking token in DeFi applications across the SEI network. Now, everything is very new at the moment, so there isn't really much you can do with that liquid staking token yet. But at least you're going to be accruing SEI rewards for staking, but more importantly, potentially airdrop points for using their platform, Kryptonite. And I'll obviously link all the below in the description. The next application is called Kawa Finance, and that's just essentially a borrow-lend platform. So you can borrow, SEI, and you can lend, SEI. There's not really anything else you can do there. But yeah, might as well start using it if you want to try and get a potential future airdrop for being one of the very earliest supporters or users of this platform. The next one is a little bit more interesting. It's Pallet.exchange, and that's the biggest NFT marketplace. And some of these NFTs are actually popping off. Now, the main NFT on the SEI network that has been doing quite well and that a lot of people have changed their profile pictures to, a lot of people who are very involved in the SEI ecosystem or on Twitter or are very bullish on SEI, is seyain's, this NFT project. A 9,000 collection, and obviously seyain's is a play on SEI and Super Seyain, so that's where the name comes from obviously. But they look kind of cool, pixelated seyain's. But if you wanted to farm the airdrop for a potential airdrop for Pallet, you would bid on these NFTs, you would list these NFTs, you would buy these NFTs, you would trade these NFTs. Just like with Tensor, just like with Magic Eden, or just like with Blur. The last airdrop opportunity I'll mention is called Yaka.finance, and that's just on testnet now. So if you don't have a lot of money, you only have like a few SEI coins, and you don't have a lot to farm with you don't have enough to buy a seyain NFT, you can just use the testnet and get good points just for using testnet tokens. So they're free, you can get them for free, and you can trade on this decentralized exchange for other tokens and just try and rack up free airdrop points. They even have an airdrop tab. So if you have a lower size portfolio, this is definitely something you could do for literally free, just by putting in a little bit of time and try and get yourself high on the leaderboard for a potential future airdrop on this exchange. Again, super early because it's still on testnet, so you might be waiting a few months before any potential airdrop here, like potentially even up to a year. So let's just be real, like this is extremely early. So have I personally gone and bought some SEI? Yes, I have. I actually bought SEI a while ago when it started popping off. I immediately sold it all and bought the top meme coin on the SEI network, which was called seyain, as well as the NFT project. It's called seyain. And the reason I did that, I don't think that's a good strategy all the time, but if you're being around in crypto in the last couple of months, you've seen that meme coins have been just the main narrative for the last few months, and it was just kind of obvious. Instead of buying the coin, just buy the biggest meme coin that was working on every chain. And I just rode that narrative and sold the seyain coins back into SEI, or sold a portion of them back into SEI. So I did well on that trade, but I don't think that's always going to be the best strategy. Like just in the last couple of months, that was the best strategy, just buying all the top meme coins on every single different chain there was, because people are going, that's like a higher beta play, so you might as well just do that. But that's not always going to work. So that's why I converted back into SEI, like half of them back into SEI. So I do think SEI is a good project. I haven't made it into like a top 5 position or anything, but I did, like I said, buy into the project a bit. I am looking at getting into the ecosystem, buying some of these NFTs, buying some of the meme coins, using some of the platforms, because I do think it has a lot of potential. But right now, like, it's one of the consensus trades, or it's starting to become one of these consensus bets, like Celestia is, like Injective was, like SEI is, like Bonk is. Like, when everything is becoming very consensus, it could still perform well over the next 6 months, but maybe the top performing coins in 6 months time won't be the same top performing coins 6 months ago. Like, I remember a year ago I was talking about Unibot, I was talking about Rollbit, and I was convinced they're going to continue being the best performing coins. But lo and behold, narratives change over the course of 6 months. Obviously Ethereum aligned coins haven't been doing well for the last 6 months, so like, I'm not sure SEI is going to be still the hot thing in 6 months time. And the other good thing about SEI though is it is a parallelized EVM. I do think that is a very nice narrative to have, and its main competitor called Monad, which apparently is even better than SEI, also a parallelized EVM, and very very fast, very very strong team just like SEI, but that's not actually going to mainnet till 2025. So SEI has a lot of growing space, a lot of room to run by itself without any really strong competitors just yet in the exact same space. So that's a good thing for SEI. But when Monad goes live, you might want to be a bit careful if your entire stack is in SEI, because Monad could potentially be better than SEI. Alright, so that's my deep dive into the SEI network. I haven't made it a huge position, haven't faded it entirely. I think it has a lot of promise. The ecosystem is very, very new, not a huge amount you can do there, but potentially it could grow into something that is very, very strong. And I do see that possibility in the fact that it is EVM compatible, so it will attract a lot of builders, and it's extremely fast and extremely cheap. So it's definitely one to be keeping on your radar, potentially. So it's definitely one to be keeping on your radar for this cycle, and very strong team, very smart guys. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.